to Deep Sleep Stories. If these stories have helped you through restless nights, please leave a review. Reviews are what help this podcast grow, reach more listeners, and stay alive. Without them, even something meaningful can slowly disappear. So if this show has brought you comfort, that small act truly helps keep it going. Now, settle in, and let's begin.
Welcome to Deep Sleep Stories, a quiet place where your mind can soften and your body can rest. And tonight, you'll drift to a seaside haven called the Blue Horizon Bungalow, where gentle waves and moonlit breezes guide you into sleep. You are here now, and you don't have to do anything at all. Let your shoulders loosen as if a warm hand has smoothed the day away. Let your jaw unclench, your tongue rest easily, your brow unfurl. Imagine a slow exhale that empties out any leftover hurry, any lingering list of things to remember. There is nothing to hold on to for a while. Breathe in, as though you're drawing in a calm, cool softness, and breathe out, as though you're placing every worry down on a shelf where it can wait without you. If your thoughts wander, that's perfectly natural. You can let them pass like pale clouds crossing a wide sky. You can return again and again to the simple rhythm of breathing, in and out, gentle and easy. Picture yourself settling into a comfortable position, as if your body has finally found the shape it likes. The room around you becomes quieter, even the air seems to slow, and somewhere beyond this moment, somewhere just far enough away to feel like a dream, there is a shoreline that shines faintly under a night blue sky. You begin to notice it in small, soothing details. The hush of distant surf, steady and reassuring. The scent of salt carried on a breeze that is neither cold nor warm, only pleasant. The soft suggestion of moonlight that turns everything tender at the edges. You can sense a path leading toward a little home near the sea, a place that waits without expectation. Take another slow breath in and let it out longer, as if you are untying a knot. Soon, without effort, you will slip into the story itself, and it will carry you along like a quiet tide, rocking you gently toward rest. And as your breathing becomes softer, the viewpoint shifts, and the story begins to unfold on its own, like a lantern being lit in the distance, glowing steadily, guiding the way. On a coast where the sea spoke in calm, repeating phrases, the Blue Horizon Bungalow rested above a crescent of sand. It was not grand, not towering or bright in a showy way. It was the kind of place that seemed to have grown from the landscape itself, as if driftwood and sun-bleached stone had decided to become a home. The bungalow sat where dune grass rippled in the breeze, where pale shells gathered like small moons along the shoreline, and where the horizon stretched so wide you could hold every thought without crowding. In daylight, the bungalow's shutters looked the color of soft sky, washed with a hint of ocean. In evening, the same shutters turned dusky and quiet, as if they too were ready to sleep. The roof was shingled with weathered cedar, and near the front steps a lantern hung, always ready, its glass pane clear and kind. A narrow path of flat stones led up from the beach. Along it, small plants leaned toward the salt air, hardy succulents, tiny star-shaped flowers, and wild rosemary that released its scent when the wind brushed through. At the edge of the path, a low wooden fence traced the dune's curve, guiding visitors without ever feeling strict about it. Inside, the bungalow was made of calm. The floors were smooth planks of pale wood that held warmth in the evening and coolness in the afternoon. The walls were painted a creamy white that caught light gently, never glaring. The windows were wide, and each one seemed to frame the sea like a painting that changed with every breath of weather. There was a kitchen with a small table near the window, a teapot always waiting on the stove, as if it knew someone would soon come in from the shore and want comfort. There was a sitting room with a deep chair, its cushion worn in the best way, and a woven blanket draped across the back, like a promise. A shelf held books with softened spines, the kind that had been opened many times and never hurried through. And there were seashells placed here and there, not as decoration, but as quiet mementos, little pieces of the coast that had chosen to stay. Beyond the sitting room, a door opened onto a porch that faced the horizon. The porch boards creaked softly, the way old houses sometimes spoke in gentle, familiar tones. A swing hung from the rafters by thick rope, its seat smoothed by years of rocking. From there, the sea could be watched without needing to do anything but breathe. The bungalow had a caretaker, though caretaker felt almost too official. Her name was Elowen, and she came and went like a breeze through open windows. She was someone who understood the slow language of tides and the patient rhythm of sand. She kept the place ready, not for crowds, but for whoever needed quiet. Elowen lived a short walk inland in a small cottage wrapped in climbing vines. Each morning she crossed the dunes with a basket on her arm. Sometimes it held lemons from her tree. Sometimes it held a loaf of bread still warm and fragrant. Sometimes it held a bundle of lavender tied with twine, the purple stems barely moving as she walked. She never arrived with noise. Her footsteps on the path were light, as if she respected the silence the bungalow gathered overnight. On a particular evening, when the sky had begun to deepen into velvet and the first stars looked like tiny pinpricks of silver, Elowen arrived as she always did, carrying a lantern unlit because she didn't yet need it. The air was calm, with only the soft murmur of waves rolling in and out like a steady lullaby. She opened the door and stepped inside. The bungalow greeted her with its familiar coolness. The rooms held a faint scent of salt, wood, and something sweet, perhaps the memory of tea leaves. Elowen moved slowly, as if she had all the time in the world. She checked the windows first. Each latch was secure, each curtain set so it could be pulled aside easily, offering a view of the horizon even late at night. She set the basket on the kitchen table and took out a small jar of honey, golden and thick, then placed it beside the teapot. She arranged 2 mugs, not because 2 were needed, but because it felt comforting to see them there, ready. Then she walked through the sitting room and paused by the shelf of books, running her fingers along the spines as if greeting old friends. She chose one without looking too closely because the choice didn't matter. In this bungalow, the story always came gently, whether it was written in ink or spoken by the sea. Alawan placed the book on the table beside the deep chair, tucked the woven blanket more neatly over the back, and glanced toward the porch. Outside, the sky was changing. Where it had been pale, it was now deepening into indigo. A long band of lighter blue still clung to the horizon, and above it the first stars grew steadier, as if they were settling into their places for the night. Alawan stepped onto the porch. The swing waited. She rested a hand on the rope and gave it a small push, watching it move slowly back and forth, like a pendulum measuring calm. That was when she noticed it. A different kind of light, faint and shimmering, far down the beach. At first it seemed like a trick of the moon, or perhaps a small cluster of phosphorescent foam catching the glow. But the light moved with purpose. It did not flicker like reflection. It glided as though it belonged to something that had its own quiet way of traveling. Alawan's heart did not race. In this place, mysteries arrived gently. They never came with sharp edges. She watched, and as she watched, the light drifted closer, still far enough away to be soft, like a thought that hadn't fully formed. The sea continued its steady breathing. The wind remained mild. Alawan stepped off the porch and walked down the path toward the sand. Her feet sank slightly, and the grains felt cool beneath her soles. She moved in the direction of the light, not with urgency, but with a calm curiosity. As she drew nearer, she could see that the glow came from something resting near the tide line, where the wet sand reflected the sky. It was a bottle, not the kind of bottle that belonged in a kitchen, not the kind that held cider or oil. This one was slender and curved. Its glass tinted the color of sea foam. It shimmered faintly from within, as though it contained a little piece of moonlight. Alawan crouched beside it. The bottle was dry, though it had clearly been carried by the water. It lay on the sand as neatly as if it had been placed there by a careful hand. Inside was a rolled piece of paper, tied with a thread that looked like pale silver. Alawan lifted the bottle and held it up to the moon. The glow inside brightened slightly, and for a moment she thought she could hear something. A sound too soft to be called a voice, more like the hush of wind through reeds. She brought the bottle back toward the bungalow, cradling it as if it were fragile, though it felt sturdy in her hands. She walked up the stone path, the lantern by the door still unlit, and stepped inside. The bungalow seemed to welcome the bottle's glow, as if it recognized it. Alawan set the bottle on the kitchen table. In the dim light, it looked even more magical, casting a faint, watery pattern onto the wood. She poured herself a cup of tea, not because she needed it, but because it felt right to do something warm and simple beside something mysterious. Once the steam rose gently from the mug, she carefully uncorked the bottle. The air that slipped out was cool and fresh, like a breeze from far out at sea. It carried a scent of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Elowen tipped the bottle and let the rolled paper slide into her palm. She untied the silver thread. The paper unfurled slowly, and on it were words written in ink so dark it looked like midnight. The message was short. It did not plead or demand. It simply said, "When the horizon turns blue enough to be a doorway, the bungalow will remember what it has always been. Keep the lantern ready. Let the sea speak." Elowen read it twice. Then she smiled softly, as if she had been told something she already knew in her bones. She did not try to explain it. She did not rush to puzzle it out. Instead, she carried the bottle to the sitting room and placed it on the windowsill, where it could glow beside the night. Then she went to the porch and lit the lantern by the door. The flame inside was small at first, then steadied, becoming a warm point of light that made the bungalow look even more welcoming against the dark dunes. Elowen sat on the swing and let it rock gently. The rope creaked in a friendly way. The sea rolled in and out, and somewhere beyond the visible edge of the world, the horizon waited like a patient gate. As the night grew deeper, something began to change. It was subtle. The air became a little more still, as if it were listening. The sound of the waves did not stop, but it softened, becoming more like a whisper than a song. And the band of lighter blue at the horizon, usually pale and distant, seemed to intensify, deepening into a richer, more luminous shade. Elowen watched without strain. Her eyelids felt heavy, but she did not fight it. Sleepiness in this place was not something to resist. It was part of the coastal rhythm. The blue along the horizon became smoother like silk, stretched across the edge of the sea. Stars above it looked brighter by comparison, scattered like tiny, careful sparks. Then, in the midst of that blue, a small shape appeared. At first it seemed like a distant cloud, but it moved too steadily. It glided along the horizon line as though it were traveling on an unseen path. Elowen's swing slowed. She placed her feet on the porch boards and stood, the lantern's glow warming her face. She leaned on the railing and watched. The shape grew clearer. It was a boat, small and narrow like a skiff, but it did not rise and fall on waves as ordinary boats did. It moved smoothly, as if the sea beneath it had become glass. And as it drifted closer, Elowen could see something else. The boat was not made of wood, but of something like woven reeds and pale shells, bound together with strands that shimmered faintly. It approached the shore without sound. The tide seemed to make space for it, drawing back gently as if offering a place to land. The boat touched the wet sand and came to rest. In it lay a folded cloth, the color of dawn, and beside it a small bundle of something wrapped in seaweed that looked fresh and green, as though it had been gathered moments ago. Alawan did not step onto the sand immediately. She waited, letting the moment settle. Then she walked down the path, her steps slow and even. When she reached the boat, she saw that the folded cloth was a blanket, soft and light. The bundle, when she unwrapped it carefully, held a handful of smooth stones, each one painted with a different shade of blue, from pale sky to deep ocean, all blending like the horizon at twilight. There was also a small shell, spiral-shaped, its surface pearly. When Elowen lifted it, she felt a faint vibration, like a purring cat or a distant drum. She held the shell to her ear. Inside was a sound, not quite waves, not quite wind. It was something in between, a gentle voice without words, a tone that seemed to say, "You are safe. You are held. You can rest." Alawan's eyes softened. She tucked the shell into her pocket, lifted the blanket, and gathered the blue stones into the cloth, tying them into a bundle. Then she looked back at the bungalow. The lantern glowed by the door. The windows reflected starlight. The porch swing hung still, waiting. Elowen carried the bundle up the path and inside, placing it on the kitchen table beside the glowing bottle. The room now held two kinds of light: the warm amber of the lantern outside, and the cool shimmer of the bottle and stones inside. Together they made the bungalow feel like a place balanced between worlds, between day and night, land and sea, waking and dreaming. Elowen filled the kettle and set it to heat, listening to the faint hum of the water as it warmed. She moved as though she were part of a ritual she had performed many times, even if she couldn't remember doing it before. When the water began to whisper with tiny bubbles, she poured it over dried herbs, chamomile and a sprig of rosemary, and the scent rose like a calm breath. She carried the mug into the sitting room and sat in the deep chair. The woven blanket covered her lap. The bottle glowed on the windowsill. The blue stones rested on the table, their colors softly catching what little light there was. Outside, the sea continued its quiet rhythm, but Elowen sensed that something was happening beyond the ordinary. The horizon had become luminous, almost solid in its blue intensity, like a curtain drawn across the edge of the world. Elowen sipped her tea, letting the warmth settle in her chest. Her eyelids drooped, and she did not resist. The bungalow's air seemed to grow thicker, gentler, like a lullaby becoming more familiar. As she sat, a breeze slid through the slightly open window, though she was sure she had latched it. The breeze carried the scent of distant rain and a whisper of something sweet, like night-blooming flowers. The bottle's glow brightened. Elowen watched as the light inside it swirled, as though the moonlight trapped there was waking up. The paper message inside the bottle, now absent, resting somewhere in Elowen's memory, seemed to have left behind a presence, a sense of invitation. The blue stones on the table began to shimmer too, each one catching and releasing light like a slow pulse. And then, very softly, the bungalow itself seemed to exhale. It was not a sound exactly, but a feeling. The walls relaxing, the floorboards settling, the windows widening just a little, as if the house were opening its eyes. Aloan did not feel afraid. She felt the way one might feel when lying under blankets and listening to a storm outside, safe, sheltered, comforted by the knowledge that the world is doing what it does. The air in the room grew cool, and the scent of salt became stronger. Elowen leaned back in the chair, her head resting against the cushion. In the reflection of the window, she thought she saw movement, not outside, but within the glass itself. The horizon's blue seemed to ripple, and for a moment it looked like a door made of light. Elowen set her mug down carefully. She stood, the blanket sliding from her lap, and walked toward the window. Her feet made no sound on the wooden floor. She placed her hand on the sill. The glass was cool but not cold. The blue beyond it was not just sky and sea anymore. It was something deeper, like a passage into a place where night was soft and endless. Elowen did not step through. She did not need to. The bungalow was the doorway, not a threshold to cross, but a space to inhabit. She turned and looked around the room. The shadows had softened. The corners of the ceiling seemed less sharp, as if the house were becoming more like a dream. The lantern light outside flickered gently, steady and warm. The bottle on the sill glowed like a calm star. Elowen walked to the table where the blue stones lay. She untied the cloth bundle and spread the stones out, arranging them in a slow arc, like a miniature horizon. Each stone seemed to hum faintly, a quiet vibration that matched the sound of the sea. She placed the spiral shell at the center of the arc, and the vibration grew a little stronger, as if the stones and shell were speaking to each other in a language of light and tone. Elowen sat back in the chair again, folding the woven blanket over herself. She did not try to control what happened next. She only watched and listened. Outside, the sea's whisper rose and fell. The horizon's blue deepened, turning velvety and rich. And in the sitting room, the stones began to cast a faint pattern onto the walls, waves of blue light that moved slowly like underwater reflections. The bungalow felt like it was floating, though it remained firmly on land. It felt like the rooms had become a small vessel, rocking gently on a sea of quiet. Elowen's breathing slowed. Her thoughts drifted, loosening like knots in a rope. She listened to the shell's tone, the soft hum that seemed to say, "Rest now, drift now." In that calm, a memory surfaced. Not Elowen's memory exactly, but the bungalow's. Long ago, before it had a name, before its shutters were painted and its porch swing hung, this place had been a meeting point between the ocean and the sky. The horizon here was especially wide, especially clear. Sailors had looked toward it and felt something ease in their chests. Travelers had come to the shore and found themselves letting go of burdens they didn't know they carried. The land itself had noticed. The dunes had listened. The sea had remembered. And slowly, over seasons of sun and storm, the idea of shelter had formed. A gentle thought becoming wood and stone, becoming a small home that could hold rest like a bowl holds water. The bungalow had been built with ordinary hands, but the horizon had blessed it with something quiet and rare, the ability to help those who entered it feel unhurried, unburdened, safe enough to sleep deeply. Eloin had always sensed this, though she never spoke of it in grand terms. She simply tended to the house and let it do what it did. Now with the bottle and the stones and the shell, the bungalow's gift seemed to have awakened more fully, as if it were remembering its oldest purpose. The blue light on the walls grew softer, more diffuse. It no longer looked like rippling water. It looked like a lullaby made visible. Eloin's eyes grew heavy. She let them close. In her mind, the horizon became a gentle line, steady and smooth. The sea's sound became a slow breath. The bungalow's walls became arms around her, holding her in warmth and quiet. And somewhere in the bungalow, a small clock ticked faintly, not loud enough to measure time, only soft enough to remind the world that everything was moving forward at a peaceful pace. The night outside continued its slow unfolding. A breeze drifted through the rosemary by the path. The dune grass swayed. The lantern by the door glowed steadily, a warm amber point against the dark. Inside, the bottle's glow gradually dimmed, as though it too was growing sleepy. The stone's shimmer softened until it was barely visible. The shell's hum became quieter, like a lullaby fading as someone drifts off. Eloin slept. And while she slept, the bungalow kept watch in its own way. It did not stay alert with tension. It simply remained present, steady and calm, like a shoreline under a moonlit sky. If anyone had been walking along the beach at that hour, they might have noticed the bungalow's windows glowing faintly, not with bright light, but with something like peacefulness made visible. They might have felt their own shoulders relax, their breathing slow, their thoughts soften, as if the bungalow's calm spread outward like a gentle tide. The sea rolled in and out. The horizon remained blue and wide, and the night, patient and kind, held everything with a quiet hand. As the hours drifted on, the bungalow's air grew even softer, the way air does in the deepest part of night. The rooms seemed to settle lower, closer to the earth. The shadows became velvety and still. Eloin's breathing was slow and steady, like waves that never tire. Outside, the lantern's flame remained calm, protected by glass. The sky was a deep, dark blue, scattered with stars that looked unmoving, as though they were resting too. The sea's whisper became gentler, quieter, more distant. And in that gentle quiet, the Blue Horizon Bungalow simply remained, a small, cozy sanctuary where the world slowed down, a place where the horizon was always there, steady and reassuring, a place where every breath felt easier. The glow from the bottle faded to a soft ember of light. The stones looked like ordinary smooth pebbles again, their blues still beautiful, but now quiet and still. The shell's hum became so faint it could be mistaken for imagination. Everything softened, everything slowed. The bungalow held the night like a warm blanket, and the night held the bungalow like a cradle. Now, as the story becomes quieter, it can begin to dissolve the way dreams do when sleep takes over. The sea is still there, breathing in and out. The horizon is still there, wide and calm. The bungalow is still there, steady and safe. Elowen sleeps deeply, and the world asks nothing of her. You can let your own breathing follow that same gentle rhythm. In and out. Slow and easy. Let your shoulders sink a little more. Let your hands rest. Let your thoughts drift farther away, like a boat that has found still water. The Blue Horizon Bungalow grows dimmer in the distance, not because it disappears, but because you no longer need to look at it closely. You can feel its calm without effort. The lantern's warm glow becomes a soft blur. The sound of the waves becomes a hush. The horizon becomes a smooth line of deep, peaceful blue. Everything is quiet. Everything is safe. And you can rest now fully. Good night, dear traveler. Sleep well.